Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
I am proud to speak in support of H.R. 2639, the Strength in Diversity Act, which will move us one step closer to fulfilling the promise of the historic Brown versus Board of Education decision. It is a sad reality that in 2019, 65 years after Brown versus Board was decided, we are still dealing with segregated schools and the unequal opportunities these schools provide to students. We know how vital a strong education is to ensuring that children succeed in life. Let me say it again. We know how vital a strong education is to ensuring that children succeed later in life. Despite the promise of the Brown versus Board decision, our country's progress towards school integration and equal opportunities for all students has been uneven. America's public schools are more segregated today than at any time since the 1960s. We have seen for decades that segregated schools result in segregated opportunity. In my home state of Pennsylvania, we have seen firsthand how failing to fulfill the promise of Brown versus Board is hurting students in the 21st century. Not surprisingly, in my district, most public schools in suburban, predominantly white communities are well-funded, while the schools in communities with a majority of students of color are underfunded. And so the cycle of poverty and inequality continues. The Allentown School District, the third largest school district in Pennsylvania, right in the heart of my district, is facing massive deficits and narrowly avoided a financial crisis last week that would have prevented them from being able to make payroll. What does that tell the teachers who work there? What does that tell the students who attend those schools? It goes without saying that these funding gaps ultimately lead to fewer positive outcomes for students of color and harm entire communities. These disparities in my district reflect the reality of communities across the country where there are areas of concentrated poverty, and the schools in these areas do not have the funding or tax base necessary to provide strong opportunities for their students. Nationwide, we have a $23 billion racial funding gap between school districts serving students of color and school districts serving predominantly white students. According to a 2016 report from the GAO, 61% of all high poverty schools have a majority of Black and Hispanic students. The report also found that schools which are highly racially and socioeconomically segregated have fewer resources. Students at the schools also disproportionately experience more disciplinary actions than students attending diverse schools. It is therefore no surprise that Black students who attend desegregated schools are more likely to graduate from high school, attend college, attend a more selective school, and complete college. That's what happens when they are able to attend desegregated, truly integrated schools. Our schools and communities, and more importantly, our students, deserve better. That's why I'm proud to support the two bills we are marking up today, the Strength and Diversity Act and the Equity and Inclusion Enforcement Act. Both of these bills will move us closer to fulfilling the promise of educational equity by encouraging school districts to voluntarily desegregate and by strengthening enforcement of civil rights laws. Every student deserves a great education, no matter their race, family income, or zip code. And as I say those words, I believe that I realize that they've almost become trite, because everybody says those words now, at least on the campaign trail among politicians and elected officials. But that is not the case for some students of color across the country and at home in Pennsylvania's 7th District. We must work together in Congress and in our communities to ensure that every student can reach their potential. By passing these two bills, we can move a little bit closer to fulfilling the promise of Brown versus Board for students in the 21st century and finally creating equal education opportunities for all. I am proud to support these bills, and I urge my colleagues to do the same.